Picture this. It's January 4th, 1903, Coney Island, New York. 1,500 people are packed into Luna Park's amphitheater, and they're not there for a magic show or a circus act. They're there to watch an elephant die. Her name was Topsy, and she'd killed 3 men. The park owners decided she had to go, but how do you execute a 5-ton elephant? Someone had a brilliant idea: electrocution. And not just any electrocution, they'd use alternating current, AC power, at 6,600 volts. The crowd watches in horrified fascination as copper-lined sandals are attached to Topsy's feet. Wires snake across the ground, connected to a massive AC generator. Someone from Thomas Edison's company is there, filming the whole thing with one of Edison's motion picture cameras. This isn't just an execution, it's propaganda. It's the final act of a war that started 15 years earlier. When they throw the switch, Topsy's massive body convulses. Smoke rises from her feet. In 10 seconds, it's over. The crowd stands in stunned silence. The cameras keep rolling. But here's what makes this story even darker. This wasn't a random tragedy. This elephant's death was the culmination of the most brutal technological war in American history. A war between 2 of the greatest minds who ever lived. A war fought not just with patents and inventions, but with propaganda, bribery, sabotage, and the systematic torture of animals. A war where one side literally invented the electric chair just to make the other side's technology look dangerous. This is the story of Thomas Edison versus Nikola Tesla. The Wizard of Menlo Park against the mad genius from Croatia. The most celebrated inventor in American history against the man whose inventions actually power the modern world. And by the time this war was over, one would lose his company. One would die penniless and forgotten, and an elephant would become a symbol of just how dirty people will fight when billions of dollars are at stake. The question that drove this entire war sounds simple: direct current or alternating current, DC or AC. But what it really meant was, who gets to electrify America? Who controls the future? And how far will someone go to win? Because what Edison did to win this war makes modern tech rivalries look like playground arguments. If you're into stories about the geniuses and criminals who built the modern world, hit that subscribe button. And let me know in the comments if you'd heard about the elephant electrocution before today. Because most people have no idea this actually happened. To understand why 2 brilliant men went to war over electricity, you need to understand what life was like before it. And I'm not talking about romantic candlelight. I'm talking about urban death trap. New York City, 1878, 1.2 million people crammed into Manhattan. 20,000 horses filling the streets with manure. And when the sun went down, the city transformed into something out of a horror movie. Gas lamps lined the streets, but gas didn't just give you light. It gave you explosions. It gave you fires that could level city blocks. It gave you slow carbon monoxide poisoning if your lamp leaked. In 1878 alone, gas explosions killed over 200 people in Manhattan. Factories and wealthy homes used kerosene lamps, which were basically controlled fires waiting to go wrong. The poor used candles, and entire tenement buildings burned down because someone fell asleep with a candle burning. Think of it as a city running on controlled explosions that weren't really controlled at all. The telegraph already used electricity, but those overhead wires were their own nightmare. Hundreds of companies had strung thousands of wires above the streets with zero coordination. The wires got tangled, sparked, caused fires, electrocuted workers. In 1881, a lineman touched the wrong wire and got fried in front of a crowd on Broadway. His body swung from the wires for 20 minutes while people tried to figure out how to get him down safely. Into this nightmare walks Thomas Alva Edison. 31 years old, already famous for inventing the phonograph, partially deaf, obsessive, convinced he's smarter than everyone else. And he is smarter than almost everyone else. He's just not quite as smart as he thinks. Edison announces he's going to do something nobody else has managed: create a safe, reliable electric lighting system that could replace gas. Not just a single light bulb, but an entire system. Generators, wires, switches. The bulbs themselves, all working together. And here's the crucial part that would start this whole war. Edison decided to use direct current, DC power. The electricity flows in one direction, like water through a pipe. It's safe. It's predictable. You can run it at 110 volts, which is low enough that it usually won't kill you if you touch it. But DC had one massive problem that Edison either didn't see or chose to ignore. It couldn't travel far. With direct current at 110 volts, you could only send power about 1 mile before it got too weak. That meant to electrify Manhattan, you'd need a power plant every few blocks. Not one central station, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Edison didn't care. He had a plan. He had investors. And he had something nobody else had: absolute confidence that he could make it work. The Industrial Revolution wasn't like building apps where you can fail fast and pivot. When Edison's first generator caught fire, it could burn down a building. When his wiring was wrong, people died. The stakes were literally life and death, and the competition was absolutely ruthless. Think of 1880s America as a brutal startup race, but instead of fighting for users, they were fighting for entire cities. And instead of stock options, they were offering municipal contracts worth millions. And instead of non-compete clauses, they had patent lawyers who'd sue you into bankruptcy. Britain at this time was ahead of America in electrical technology. They'd had arc lighting, basically giant electric spotlights, since the 1860s. But arc lights were for factories and streets, not homes. They were too bright, too hot, too dangerous. Edison promised something different: electric light you could use to read by. Light you could turn on and off with a switch. His competition wasn't just other American inventors, it was every gas company in America. And they had billions invested in their infrastructure. If Edison succeeded, they'd be obsolete. So they fought back with the only weapons they had: fear and lobbying. They paid newspapers to run stories about how dangerous electricity was. They lobbied city councils to ban electrical wiring. Edison and his rivals weren't just competing for profit. They were fighting for survival in a market that could only support a few winners. And Edison had decided he'd do whatever it took to be one of them. Let's talk about who Thomas Edison really was, because the legend and the reality are very different things. Born in 1847 in Milan, Ohio. Middle-class family. His father sold lumber and grain. Edison had almost no formal education because teachers thought he was slow. Turned out he wasn't slow at all. He was deaf in one ear from childhood, maybe from scarlet fever, maybe from a train conductor boxing his ears. And that deafness shaped everything about him. When you can't hear well, you focus intensely on what you can see and touch. Edison became obsessed with how things worked mechanically. He read constantly, taught himself chemistry, physics, mechanical engineering. By age 12, he was selling newspapers on trains. By 15, he was a telegraph operator. Here's where his genius shows up. Edison didn't just operate telegraphs, he improved them. He figured out how to send multiple messages on the same wire. He invented a stock ticker that made him $40,000. Which in the 1870s was like selling your startup for $10 million today. In 1876, at age 29, Edison did something revolutionary. He built the world's first industrial research laboratory, Menlo Park, New Jersey. Not a workshop where one inventor tinkered alone. An invention factory. He hired dozens of machinists, engineers, scientists. He set up production lines for prototyping. His motto was famous: genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. What he really meant was, genius is having enough employees to try every possible solution until something works. And it worked. Between 1876 and 1881, Menlo Park produced the phonograph, improved the telephone, perfected the light bulb, and designed the entire electrical distribution system. The press called him the Wizard of Menlo Park. He was America's first celebrity scientist. But here's what they didn't show you in the history books. Edison built his empire on other people's ideas. The light bulb? Joseph Swan in England invented a working version before Edison. Edison's breakthrough was making a bulb that lasted longer and creating the system around it. But when Swan tried to protect his patent, Edison fought him in court until Swan gave up and accepted a partnership where Edison got most of the credit. The motion picture camera? Inspired by the work of Edward Muybridge and Etienne Jules Marey, Edison's employee William Dixon did most of the actual inventing. Even the phonograph, Edison's most original invention, he improved and patented, while other people were working on similar ideas. Edison understood something crucial. In American patent law, it didn't matter if you were first to think of something. It mattered if you were first to file the patent. And it mattered even more if you had enough money to defend that patent in court. His strategy was simple. Hire brilliant people, have them develop ideas, patent everything under Edison's name, and then use his legal team and his reputation to crush anyone who challenged him. Lewis Latimer, a brilliant African-American draftsman and inventor, improved Edison's filament design and helped Edison patent it. Edison used Latimer's work for years. You know whose name went on the patents? Edison's. Francis Upton, a mathematician from Princeton, did all the complex calculations for Edison's electrical systems. Edison couldn't do advanced math. Upton could, but everyone called it the Edison system. This wasn't illegal. This was business. Edison believed that organization and persistence mattered more than individual flashes of genius. He believed that being able to turn an idea into a commercial product was the real invention. And you know what? He was probably right about that. But it also meant that when someone smarter came along, someone with genuine flashes of genius that Edison couldn't match, Edison had only one option: destroy them. By 1880, Edison was untouchable. His Pearl Street station in Lower Manhattan was the world's first commercial power grid. It worked. Rich people were paying premium prices to get electricity in their homes and businesses. Edison was making money, his investors were happy, and he had municipal contracts in dozens of cities. He'd won. He was the undisputed king of electricity in America. But what nobody knew was that a 28-year-old immigrant from the Austro-Hungarian Empire was about to walk into his laboratory. And everything Edison had built was about to be threatened by a technology that was simply better. Nikola Tesla was everything Edison was not. Born 1856 in Smiljan, in what's now Croatia, but was then part of the Austrian Empire. His father was a Serbian Orthodox priest. His mother was an inventor herself, creating household appliances with zero formal training. Tesla was the fourth of 5 children, brilliant but strange from childhood. While Edison was practical and physical, Tesla was theoretical and mathematical. While Edison tried every possibility, Tesla visualized complete inventions in his head before building them. While Edison was gregarious and charming to investors, Tesla was awkward and obsessive. Tesla could speak 8 languages. He had a photographic memory. He could multiply 3-digit numbers in his head. And he had something that drove him crazy his entire life. He saw things that weren't there. Not like hallucinations exactly. Tesla would think about a problem, and he'd visualize the solution so completely that he could see it, rotating in space in front of him, as real as if he'd built it. He'd test these mental inventions, watch them run, see where they failed, fix them in his mind, and only then build the physical version. And it would work. This sounds amazing until you realize Tesla couldn't turn it off. His mind was constantly generating these visions. Lights would seem too bright. Sounds would seem too loud. He developed obsessive, compulsive behaviors that got worse as he aged. He couldn't stand to touch people's hair. He had to count his steps. He could only stay in hotel rooms with numbers divisible by 3. He was a genius whose brain was so powerful it was torturing him. Tesla studied at the Polytechnic Institute in Graz and the University of Prague, though he never officially graduated. He got obsessed with one specific problem. Could you make electricity work differently? Instead of direct current flowing in one direction, what if it alternated? Flowed forward, flowed backward, forward, backward, 60 times a second? His professors told him it was impossible. You couldn't make a motor that ran on alternating current. The physics didn't work. Forget about it. Tesla couldn't forget about it. He became obsessed. He moved to Paris, worked for the Continental Edison Company, and spent every spare moment thinking about AC power. And then, in 1882, he had his vision. He was walking through a park in Budapest at sunset reciting poetry, when suddenly he saw it. A complete alternating current motor, rotating in space in front of him. He grabbed a stick and drew it in the dirt. Every component, every detail. A motor with no brushes, no commutator, just a rotating magnetic field that pulled the rotor around. It was theoretically perfect. It was also something nobody had ever built. Tesla knew he needed to get to America. That's where the money was. That's where the electrical revolution was happening. That's where Edison was. He arrived in New York in 1884 with 4 cents in his pocket, a book of poems, and a letter of introduction to Thomas Edison from Charles Batchelor, who ran Edison's Paris operation. The letter reportedly said, "I know 2 great men. You are one of them. The other is this young man." When Tesla walked into Edison's office, the Wizard of Menlo Park was 48 hours into solving a crisis with a ship's electrical system. Edison looked at this strange, well-dressed immigrant and said, basically, "If you're so smart, fix it." Tesla worked through the night. By morning, the ship's generators were running better than they ever had. Edison was impressed. He hired Tesla on the spot. And that's when everything started to go wrong, because Tesla and Edison were fundamentally incompatible. Edison believed in trial and error. Tesla believed in calculation and theory. Edison worked by instinct. Tesla worked by mathematics. Edison trusted his employees to follow orders. Tesla trusted his own visions over everyone else's experience. Tesla looked at Edison's DC system and saw its limitations immediately. The need for power plants every few blocks. The massive copper cables required. The inability to scale. He told Edison, "I can redesign your generators. Make them more efficient, better, cheaper." According to Tesla, this is what happened next. Edison said he'd pay Tesla $50,000 if he could deliver. Tesla worked for months, 18-hour days, redesigning generators, improving motors, fixing problems across Edison's entire system. When he was done, Edison's equipment was significantly better. Tesla asked for his $50,000. Edison laughed. "Tesla," he said, "you don't understand American humor. There's no written record of this promise. Maybe Edison made it and lied. Maybe Tesla misunderstood. Maybe Edison was joking and Tesla took it seriously. We'll never know for certain. What we do know is that Tesla quit in 1885, furious and broke. He spent the next year digging ditches for $2 a day, his mind filled with visions of machines that could change the world, his hands blistered and bleeding. And this is where the story gets darker. Because if Edison had paid Tesla, or kept him happy, or recognized his genius, the war might never have happened. Tesla might have improved DC power instead of perfecting AC. The entire history of electricity might have been different. But Edison let him go. And that decision would cost Edison everything. Let me explain why AC power was such a big deal and why it threatened Edison's entire empire. Direct current, Edison's system flows like water through a pipe. Steady, predictable, one direction, at 110 volts, it's relatively safe. You can store it in batteries. The motors are simple. It works. But the distance problem is killer. Electrical resistance means that the farther you send DC power, the more energy you lose to heat in the wires. To send DC power 1 mile, you need thick copper cables. And even then, you lose 50% of your power. To electrify Manhattan with DC, Edison needed 59 separate power plants. Each one required a steam engine, coal delivery, maintenance, workers. The infrastructure cost was enormous. Now, alternating current. Instead of flowing steadily in one direction, AC power reverses direction 60 times per second. That might sound more complicated, but it has one absolutely revolutionary advantage. You can transform it. With a transformer, which is basically just 2 coils of wire wrapped around an iron core, you can take AC power at one voltage and change it to a different voltage. More importantly, you can step it up to extremely high voltages for transmission, then step it back down for home use. Here's why that matters. High voltage travels far more efficiently than low voltage. You can send 50,000 volts of AC power hundreds of miles with minimal loss, then transform it down to 120 volts for household use. With AC, you could put one power plant at Niagara Falls and electrify half of New York State. With DC, you needed a power plant every few blocks. The economic implications were staggering. AC was 90% more efficient for long-distance transmission. It was 70% cheaper to install. It could serve vastly more customers per power plant. But there was a problem: motors. DC motors were simple and reliable. AC motors, most people thought, were impossible. The alternating current reversed direction too fast for a motor to work. That's what Tesla solved in Budapest. His induction motor used a rotating magnetic field created by multiple phases of AC power. The motor's rotor just sat there. No brushes, no commutator, no friction, and the rotating magnetic field dragged it around. It was elegant. It was efficient. It was perfect. By 1888, Tesla had perfected his system. AC generators, transformers, motors, everything needed for a complete electrical grid. He filed his patents. He gave public demonstrations. And he attracted the attention of someone with very deep pockets, George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was 42 years old, already wealthy from inventing the air brake for trains. He understood manufacturing, distribution, and most importantly, he understood that infrastructure businesses were winner-take-all. Whoever controlled electrical distribution would make billions. He looked at Tesla's patents and saw the future. In July 1888, Westinghouse bought Tesla's patents for $60,000 cash plus royalty payments. In modern terms, this was like paying $20 million for a technology that could be worth hundreds of billions. Tesla moved to Pittsburgh to work for Westinghouse Electric Corporation. For the first time in years, Tesla had money, resources, and people who believed in him. He refined his motors, improved his generators, and helped Westinghouse build the infrastructure for AC power. Edison read about the Westinghouse-Tesla deal in the newspapers. He understood immediately what it meant. Everything he'd built was threatened. His DC patents, his infrastructure, his municipal contracts, his reputation. All of it could become obsolete if AC power caught on. Edison had two options: adapt or attack. He chose attack. And what he did next was so brutal, so calculated, and so public that it shocked even his own employees. Edison decided that if he couldn't beat AC on engineering grounds, he'd beat it through fear. He would make the public terrified of alternating current. He'd prove it was deadly, and he'd do it in the most horrifying way possible, by electrocuting living creatures in front of crowds. In 1888, Edison launched what might be the first modern PR smear campaign. His strategy was simple: make people associate AC power with death. Edison hired a man named Harold Brown. Brown was an electrical engineer with a reputation for publicity stunts. Edison gave him funding and laboratory space, and Brown got to work. In July 1888, Brown gave a public demonstration at Columbia College in New York. He brought a dog, a large dog. In front of an audience that included reporters and city officials, Brown applied increasing amounts of direct current to the dog. The dog survived 300 volts DC. It survived 400 volts. Brown's point, DC power, even at high voltages, was survivable. Then Brown switched to AC power. At 300 volts AC, the dog died instantly. The crowd was horrified. The newspapers printed the story. Brown repeated the demonstration with other dogs, then cats. Then he brought a horse named Buck to another demonstration and electrocuted it with AC power. This wasn't science. This was propaganda. Brown's demonstrations were rigged. He was using deliberately cruel methods for the AC tests, making sure the animals died in the most disturbing way possible. For DC tests, he used brief exposures. For AC tests, he used sustained current until the animals died. But it worked. The newspapers ran headlines about deadly alternating current. City councils started questioning whether to allow AC power in their municipalities. And everyone knew that Harold Brown was funded by Edison. Edison himself publicly claimed he wasn't involved. Behind the scenes, he was coordinating everything. Documents later revealed that Edison's company was paying Brown's expenses, providing equipment, and helping write his propaganda materials. But the campaign went further, much further. Edison learned that the state of New York was considering replacing hanging with a more humane execution method. The state formed a commission to study the issue. Edison saw an opportunity. He lobbied the commission to adopt electrocution as the execution method. Specifically, electrocution using alternating current. And not just any AC equipment manufactured by Westinghouse. Think about what an absolutely ruthless move this was. Edison was trying to make Westinghouse's technology synonymous with death. He wanted people to think, AC power is so dangerous, we use it to execute criminals. Edison even suggested a new word, Westinghoused. As in, the condemned man was Westinghoused yesterday, executed by AC power. Westinghouse was horrified. He refused to sell execution equipment to the state. But the state bought Westinghouse generators through third parties. They built the first electric chair using Westinghouse AC equipment. The first execution was scheduled for August 6, 1890. The condemned man was William Kemmler, convicted of murdering his girlfriend with an axe. Westinghouse hired the best lawyers to challenge the execution method as cruel and unusual punishment. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court. Westinghouse lost. On August 6th, they strapped Kemmler into the electric chair. They applied 1,000 volts of AC power. It didn't work right. Kemmler screamed. Blood vessels burst. His flesh burned. The smell was horrific. The witnesses were traumatized. They had to electrocute him again. The whole thing took 8 minutes. One witness said it was far worse than hanging. But the newspapers didn't report it as a failure of the technology. They reported it as proof that AC power was monstrously dangerous. Edison's campaign was working. Meanwhile, actual people were dying from electrical accidents. But here's the thing. Most of them were dying from DC power, because DC was what was actually installed in cities. There were more DC deaths than AC deaths, because there was more DC infrastructure. But every time there was an AC accident, Edison's people made sure it made the newspapers. Every DC accident was downplayed or ignored. This was the birth of modern FUD marketing. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Make people afraid of your competitor's product, even if your own product is actually more dangerous. Edison sent agents to sabotage Westinghouse installations. They'd cut wires and then report the dangerous AC equipment failure. They'd bribe building inspectors to cite problems with AC wiring. They'd pay off newspaper reporters to write scare stories. In one particularly nasty incident, Edison's people left deliberately frayed AC wires near a horse stable. When a horse touched the wires and died, they made sure it made the front page. Westinghouse was furious, but couldn't match Edison in the PR war. Edison was beloved by the American public, the Wizard of Menlo Park, the genius inventor. When Edison said AC was dangerous, people believed him. Tesla was horrified by the animal electrocutions. In his own demonstrations, he'd run millions of volts of high-frequency AC current through his own body to prove it could be safe. He'd light up fluorescent tubes while holding them, his body completing the circuit, showing that the right kind of AC power was harmless. But Tesla's demonstrations were scientific. Edison's were visceral. Dead dogs made headlines. A man lighting a bulb by holding it didn't. And just when it seemed Edison might win through fear alone, Westinghouse got an opportunity that would change everything. The World's Columbian Exposition. The Chicago World's Fair of 1893. The greatest display of technology the world had ever seen. And the organizers wanted it lit by electricity. They put out a bid for the contract. Edison bid, Westinghouse bid, and the war between DC and AC was about to have its decisive battle. The Chicago World's Fair contract was worth $1,300,000, but its real value was incalculable. Whoever lit the fair would prove their technology in front of the world. 27 million people were expected to attend. Edison bid using DC power, but his bid had a massive problem. DC's distance limitations meant he'd need multiple power plants throughout the fairgrounds. The infrastructure would be visible, noisy, and expensive. Westinghouse bid using AC. He could put a single power plant at one location and transmit power throughout the entire fair. Cleaner, simpler, more elegant. Edison bid $650,000. Westinghouse bid $410,000. 37% cheaper. The fair organizers chose Westinghouse. Edison was furious. He immediately sued, claiming patent infringement. He claimed that Westinghouse's bulbs violated Edison's patents. The lawsuit was purely to cause delays and problems. But Westinghouse had a plan. He'd work around Edison's patents completely. He designed a new bulb with a different filament design that didn't violate any Edison patents. Problem solved. Except now Westinghouse had another problem. Money. To underbid Edison by that much, Westinghouse had committed to a price that barely covered costs. Between the fair contract and his other operations, Westinghouse Electric was burning through cash. And then the panic of 1893 hit. The Panic of 1893 was the worst financial crisis America had seen since the Civil War. Banks failed. Railroads went bankrupt. Credit dried up. Westinghouse's stock price collapsed. George Westinghouse was facing bankruptcy. His board of directors gave him an ultimatum: cut costs or lose the company. They wanted him to void Tesla's royalty contract. Remember, Tesla was supposed to get royalties on every AC motor and generator sold. As AC took off, those royalties would be worth millions, maybe tens of millions. Westinghouse met with Tesla. He explained the situation. The company was on the verge of collapse. If the royalty contract remained, the banks would force bankruptcy, and both men would lose everything. Tesla, according to accounts, took out his royalty contract and tore it up. He said essentially, "You believed in me when nobody else did. You gave me a chance. Keep the contract. Save your company." Tesla gave up somewhere between $12 million and $50 million in future royalties. Nobody knows the exact amount because it depended on future sales, but even the conservative estimates are staggering. This is one of the greatest acts of financial sacrifice in business history. Tesla could have bankrupted Westinghouse and tried to sell the patents elsewhere. Instead, he chose friendship and principles over money. It was also probably the worst business decision he ever made. That money would have secured his financial future. Without it, Tesla would spend the rest of his life struggling for funding, losing control of his inventions, and dying in poverty. But in that moment, it saved Westinghouse. The company survived. And on May 1st, 1893, the Chicago World's Fair opened. The sight was beyond imagination. 200,000 incandescent bulbs illuminated the White City, a fantasy architecture of plaster and light. Visitors who'd only seen gas lamps or limited electric lights stood in tears. The fair glowed like something from heaven. All powered by AC, all designed by Tesla and Westinghouse. Edison couldn't deny it anymore. AC had won the public demonstration. 27 million people saw proof that alternating current was safe, reliable, and vastly superior to direct current. But Edison wasn't done fighting. He had one more card to play: his investors. J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in America, had funded Edison from the beginning. Morgan saw that AC was winning. He also saw that Edison was stubbornly refusing to adapt. Morgan decided to do what powerful investors always do when the founder becomes a liability. He removed him. While the Chicago Fair glowed with AC power, Edison was in his laboratory, pretending the war wasn't lost. He'd moved on to other projects: motion pictures, better phonographs, mining equipment. But his electrical company was struggling. General Electric Company, formed by merging Edison's company with Thomson-Houston Electric, was spending millions fighting Westinghouse for municipal contracts. Edison still held significant stock, but he wasn't running the company day-to-day anymore. The board had hired professional managers, and those managers looked at the numbers and realized, we're fighting a losing battle with DC power. In meetings, they'd suggest, maybe we should license AC patents. Maybe we should make AC equipment. Maybe we should compete with Westinghouse instead of trying to destroy them. Edison refused. Absolutely not. AC was dangerous. DC was better. They just needed to keep fighting. But J.P. Morgan didn't care about Edison's pride. Morgan cared about returns on investment, and DC Power wasn't delivering those returns. In 1892, Morgan forced a merger between Edison General Electric and Thomson-Houston. Thomson-Houston had AC patents. The new company, General Electric, would manufacture both DC and AC equipment. They dropped Edison from the company name. Thomas Edison, the founder, the genius, the wizard of Menlo Park, was essentially fired from his own company. He kept some stock, but he had no control. The company that bore his name no longer bore his name. Edison was devastated. He'd lost his company. He'd lost the war. AC was becoming the standard across America. But at least he still had his reputation. He was still the most celebrated inventor in America. Still the wizard. Or was he? Because as AC rolled out across the country, people started learning about Nikola Tesla. Newspapers ran stories about the immigrant genius whose inventions powered the modern grid. Scientists recognized that Tesla's motor and his polyphase system were revolutionary achievements. Edison had spent years trying to destroy Tesla's reputation, calling him impractical, eccentric, strange. But now people were asking, who really invented the electrical age? And the answer was complicated. Edison invented the first practical electrical grid, even if it was DC. He pioneered the business model of central power generation. He proved it could be profitable. But Tesla invented the technology that actually powered the modern world. AC power, the induction motor, the polyphase system. 99% of electrical grids today use Tesla's designs, not Edison's. Who deserves credit? Edison's supporters said Edison built a working system. Tesla just had ideas. Tesla's supporters said Tesla had the right ideas. Edison just had better marketing. The truth is, both men were essential, but only one of them tortured animals to win. Meanwhile, Westinghouse was winning the biggest prize of all, Niagara Falls. The Niagara Falls Power Company was planning the world's largest hydroelectric project. They needed to transmit power 20 miles to Buffalo, New York. DC couldn't do it. Only AC could. In 1893, they awarded the contract to Westinghouse Electric. 3 years later, the Niagara Falls project came online. 3 massive AC generators designed by Tesla and built by Westinghouse sent power 20 miles to Buffalo with minimal loss. The project was such a success that they built more generators. Eventually, Niagara Falls would power all of Buffalo, Toronto, and large parts of the Northeast. It was the final proof. AC had won. Not just in theory or at a fair, but in the real world, powering real cities, making real money. Edison's DC systems started getting decommissioned. Manhattan's Pearl Street Station, Edison's first power plant, his proudest achievement, shut down in 1895. The building was torn down, but Edison wasn't completely destroyed. He was wealthy from his other inventions. He still had his laboratory. He worked on new projects. But he never regained the power and influence he had in the 1880s. Tesla should have been triumphant. His technology had won. He'd proven everyone wrong. But remember, he'd torn up his royalty contract. The technology powering America was his design, and he was getting nothing from it. Tesla started new projects, a laboratory in Colorado Springs, where he generated artificial lightning and terrified the locals. Plans for wireless power transmission, a massive tower on Long Island called Wardenclyffe that was supposed to broadcast electricity through the air. But his funding kept falling through. Investors who'd give him money would pull out when his experiments seemed too ambitious. Tesla's visions got more grandiose. His behavior got more eccentric. He claimed to be communicating with Mars. He designed weapons that could destroy armies. Some of it was genius, ahead of its time. Some of it was nonsense. And nobody, including Tesla himself, seemed to know which was which anymore. By the 1900s, Tesla was brilliant, famous, and broke. Westinghouse was successful, but struggling with debt. And Edison was bitter, wealthy, and increasingly irrelevant to the electrical industry he'd helped create. The war was over, but the casualties were everywhere. Let's talk about what this war actually cost, because it's not just about money or reputations. The electrocution propaganda wasn't just morally reprehensible, it delayed the adoption of AC power by years. And that delay had consequences. Between 1888 and 1893, American cities were stuck with expensive, inefficient DC power systems because they were scared of AC. Buildings that could have been lit cheaply with AC had to install expensive DC systems or stick with dangerous gas lighting. Factory electrification was delayed. Industrial productivity suffered. American companies had to compete with European companies that had adopted AC faster. How many fires happened because cities kept using gas longer than necessary? How many workers died in factories that couldn't afford DC power? We'll never know exact numbers. But the FUD campaign Edison ran cost lives. Not in the dramatic way of electrocuted elephants. In the quiet way of delayed progress. And the animal electrocutions themselves. The campaign killed dozens of dogs, cats, horses, cattle. Animals tortured to death not for science or food, but for propaganda. In 1903, long after the war was over, they electrocuted Topsy the elephant. Why? Topsy had killed 3 men and was considered dangerous. But why electrocution? Why AC power? Why film it? Because Edison's motion picture company was looking for spectacular content. And because the idea that AC power was deadly was so ingrained that it seemed like the obvious choice. The propaganda had worked so well that people forgot it was propaganda. For Tesla personally, the cost was crushing. He'd given up millions in royalties. But worse, he'd lost control of his patents. Various companies held rights to different aspects of his inventions. Tesla couldn't develop his own motors or generators without licensing agreements. He tried to move into new fields: radio, wireless power, robotics. But every time he tried to fund a project, investors would remember, this is the guy who tore up a multi-million-dollar contract. This is the guy who goes broke on grandiose schemes. Tesla's last major project, the Wardenclyffe Tower, collapsed when J.P. Morgan pulled funding in 1906. Morgan had backed the project expecting a wireless communication system. When Tesla admitted he was actually trying to broadcast electrical power through the atmosphere, Morgan realized it would make his copper mines and electrical investments worthless. Morgan cut Tesla off. The Wardenclyffe Tower was never completed. The property was sold for debts. Tesla spent the rest of his life in hotels, working on increasingly strange projects, giving interviews to reporters who treated him like a fascinating curiosity. The genius who'd electrified the world, living on credit in the Hotel New Yorker, feeding pigeons. Westinghouse came out better, but not by much. His company survived, but he'd been forced out of control by his board of directors in 1907. The same thing that happened to Edison happened to Westinghouse. Professional managers took over. The founder became an emeritus figure. George Westinghouse died in 1914. Tesla attended the funeral. By that point, Tesla had so little money that friends had to buy his train ticket. Edison lived longer, dying in 1931 at age 84. He was honored as one of America's greatest inventors. Obituaries worldwide praised his achievements. Cities dimmed their lights for a minute of mourning. But here's what they didn't mention. Near the end of his life, Edison admitted that DC power had been a mistake. In conversations with colleagues, he acknowledged that AC was superior for power distribution. He never said it publicly, though. Tesla lived until 1943. He died alone in a hotel room, broke, with documents and plans for inventions scattered around him. The government seized his papers, worried they might contain weapons designs. Most were harmless, some were brilliant. None made him any money. At the time of his death, the entire world ran on Tesla's designs. Every electrical motor, every power line, every transformer, all based on patents he'd either given away or sold for tiny amounts. The war between Edison and Tesla established patterns we still see today. The ruthless FUD campaigns, Apple saying PCs get viruses, Microsoft saying open source is communist, oil companies saying electric cars don't work, tobacco companies saying smoking isn't harmful. The playbook Edison wrote is still being used. The battle between visionary founders and professional managers. Steve Jobs fired from Apple. Jack Dorsey pushed out of Twitter. Founders who build companies, then lose control when investors want different things. The struggle between better technology and established infrastructure. VHS versus Betamax. HD DVD versus Blu-ray. Every format war is essentially AC versus DC all over again. And the pattern of brilliant inventors dying broke, while others profit from their work. How many engineers at Google hold patents but don't control their value? How many startup founders lose equity in later funding rounds? But there's one cost that's harder to quantify. What could Tesla have done if he'd kept his money? In 1931, Tesla proposed a wireless power transmission system that he claimed could provide free electricity to the world. Investors ignored him. Was it nonsense? Maybe, but maybe not. Tesla proposed vertical takeoff aircraft in 1928. Dismissed as fantasy, we call them helicopters now. He described bladeless turbines, renewable energy systems, radar, particle beam weapons. Some worked, some didn't. But he never had the resources to fully develop most of them. What could Tesla have invented if he'd had Edison's wealth and Edison's laboratories? What technologies would we have now? We'll never know. The war destroyed that possibility. Here's the thing about the Edison-Tesla war. Most of what people believe about it is wrong. The popular narrative goes like this. Edison was a villain who stole ideas. Tesla was a saint who was cheated. AC was obviously better than DC. Edison's propaganda was evil. Tesla was a pure genius who cared nothing for money. But reality is messier. Let's start with Edison. Was he a villain? By modern standards, absolutely. He ran propaganda campaigns that involved animal torture. He spread misinformation. He bribed officials. He fought dirty. But by 1880s standards, this was just aggressive competition. Standard Oil was breaking strikes with private armies. Railroad companies were bribing entire state legislatures. Banks were manipulating markets and destroying competitors. Edison fought dirty because everyone fought dirty. He just happened to fight dirty against someone we sympathize with more. Was Edison even wrong about DC being safer? Initially, yes. At 110 volts, DC was safer for household use than high-voltage AC. The early AC systems ran at much higher voltages, and there were more accidents. The problem wasn't that Edison was lying. The problem was he kept lying even after AC safety improved. He never admitted when the evidence changed. Now Tesla, was he cheated? Absolutely. That $50,000 dispute, whether real or misunderstood, symbolizes how badly Tesla was treated. He improved Edison's systems, quit when he felt cheated, and then his ideas were dismissed. But was Tesla a saint? No. He was difficult to work with. He refused to compromise. He had a massive ego. He publicly insulted other inventors, including Marconi and Hertz. He made grandiose claims he couldn't back up. His behavior got worse as he aged. In the 1920s and 30s, Tesla would give bizarre interviews claiming he'd invented death rays and earthquake machines. Some of this was probably just PR to attract funding. Some of it was mental illness. Some of it might have been true, but poorly explained. Tesla's tragedy wasn't just that he was cheated. It was that he made terrible business decisions. Tearing up the royalty contract was admirable, but stupid. He could have negotiated. He could have kept some royalties. He chose all or nothing and got nothing. And the technology itself, we say AC won, and it did, but not completely. Your phone charges on DC. Your laptop runs on DC internally. Electric cars use DC batteries. Solar panels produce DC. Most electronics run on DC with AC to DC converters. The grid runs on AC because it's better for long-distance transmission, but everything in your house that's actually computing or storing energy uses DC. Modern electrical engineering is recognizing what Edison and Tesla both missed. You need both. AC for transmission, DC for use. The war between them was pointless, because the answer was always both. Even the animal electrocutions, they're horrifying, and there's no excuse for them. But the 1903 elephant electrocution, the one everyone remembers, that wasn't part of the propaganda war. The war was over. AC had won. Topsy was killed because she'd killed 3 men, and Luna Park owners wanted her dead. They chose electrocution because it seemed efficient. Edison's company filmed it because they filmed everything. They were making money from motion pictures. It wasn't propaganda. It was just casual cruelty, which is somehow even worse. The Scylla Electrica was propaganda, though. No question. Edison lobbied for AC-powered executions specifically to make Westinghouse's technology look deadly. That's documented. The first execution went horribly wrong, which Edison should have expected. But here's the darker truth. Electrocution became the standard execution method in America for decades. It was considered more humane than hanging. Multiple states adopted it. Edison's propaganda worked so well that people forgot it was propaganda. They thought of electrocution as modern and scientific, not realizing it was designed as a weapon in a corporate war. And the propaganda never really stopped. Even today, when people talk about the Edison-Tesla rivalry, they pick sides. Team Edison, practical genius, built things that worked, created industries. Team Tesla, visionary genius, betrayed by capitalism, ahead of his time. But these are myths, comfortable stories, good guys and bad guys. The truth is, both men were brilliant. Both were flawed. Both made massive contributions. Both did terrible things. Both suffered for it. Edison built the infrastructure. Tesla designed the system. Westinghouse provided the capital. Countless engineers whose names we don't know did the actual work. Electricity wasn't invented by one genius, or even 2. It was developed by thousands of people working in labs and workshops, trying ideas, failing, improving. Edison and Tesla were the most visible, but they were part of something larger. But we don't remember systems and incremental improvements. We remember wars and rivalries. We remember elephants and betrayals. We remember the wizard versus the mad genius. And maybe that's okay. Maybe those stories, even when simplified, teach us something. They teach us that better technology doesn't automatically win. Marketing matters. Infrastructure matters. Timing matters. They teach us that brilliant people make terrible decisions. Tesla giving up millions for friendship. Edison clinging to DC too long, both men refusing to compromise. They teach us that wars have costs beyond winners and losers, ideas delayed, lives disrupted, animals tortured, all for market share. But they also teach us that progress happens anyway. Despite propaganda, despite dirty tricks, despite everything. The better technology eventually won. Not quickly, not cleanly, but inevitably. And they teach us that the people who change the world often don't benefit from those changes. Tesla died broke, while the world ran on his inventions. Edison lost his company while keeping his name. Sometimes history is usually it's not. Let's talk about legacy. Because the Edison-Tesla war shaped the modern world in ways we barely recognize. Start with the obvious, alternating current. Approximately 90% of the world's electrical generation and transmission uses AC power. The grid that powers your reading light, your phone charger, your refrigerator, all of it, is essentially the system Tesla designed in 1888. The induction motor Tesla patented powers everything from electric cars to industrial machinery. It's one of the most important inventions in human history. It converted electricity from something that just made light and heat into something that could do mechanical work efficiently. Without Tesla's motor, the Industrial Revolution stays steam-powered for decades longer. Without AC transmission, cities stay small and localized because you need power plants every mile. Without the polyphase system, electrical grids cost 10 times as much to build. Tesla's vision of clean energy generated at natural power sources and transmitted hundreds of miles, that's exactly what we do. Hydroelectric, wind, solar, nuclear, all transmitted over AC grids to wherever it's needed. But Edison's legacy is equally important. He didn't invent the light bulb, but he created the business model for electrical utilities. The idea of central power generation with paid subscriptions. The idea of an integrated system where the company controlled generation, distribution, and the devices themselves. Sound familiar? It's Apple's model. It's Amazon's model. Control the ecosystem and you control the market. Edison also pioneered industrial R&D. Menlo Park was the first corporate research lab. Before Edison, inventors worked alone. After Edison, companies hired teams of researchers, engineers, and technicians. Every tech company with an R&D department is following Edison's model. And that model has problems. Who gets credit when a team creates something? Who gets the patents? Who gets the money? Edison said the organization gets it. The people funding the research own the results. The inventor is just an employee. This is now standard in tech. You work for Google, your inventions belong to Google. You work for Apple, your designs belong to Apple. It's in every employment contract. But is it fair? Edison's employees created brilliant things. Francis Upton, Lewis Latimer, William Dixon. Their contributions were crucial. They got salaries, not fortunes. Edison got the credit and the wealth. Is that wrong, or is it just business? Modern patent law hasn't solved this. Universities claim ownership of professors' inventions. Companies claim ownership of employee innovations. Open source tries to reject the whole system. We're still fighting the war Edison started. The propaganda techniques Edison used are everywhere now. Big tobacco claiming cigarettes aren't harmful. Oil companies funding climate denial. Tech companies spreading fear about competitors' privacy practices while doing the same things themselves. FUD as a strategy works. It works so well that every industry uses it. And the format wars. Betamax versus VHS. HD DVD versus Blu-ray. Lightning cables versus USB-C. Every single one follows the same pattern as AC versus DC. Superior technology doesn't automatically win. Marketing, distribution, partnerships, installed base, all matter as much as technical merit. VHS won over Betamax, not because it was better, but because it was cheaper and had more content. Sound familiar? But here's what might be Edison's darkest legacy. the idea that innovation requires ruthlessness, that nice guys finish last, that if you're not willing to crush your competitors, someone else will crush you. Silicon Valley worships this idea. Move fast and break things. Disrupt everything. Winner takes all. Edison proved it could work. He crushed competitors, he broke rules, he spread fear. And he became one of the richest, most celebrated men in America. That success taught generations of entrepreneurs. This is how you win. But at what cost? Edison lost his company. He lost respect from his peers who knew how dirty he'd fought. Near the end of his life, when he admitted DC had been wrong, he was admitting his entire campaign was built on lies. Was it worth it? Tesla's legacy is different. He proved that brilliant ideas aren't enough. You need business sense. You need political skill. You need to defend your work. Tesla gave away his most valuable asset to save a friend's company. That's admirable. It's also why he died broke. Every idealistic engineer who gets screwed by a corporation is following Tesla's path. Every brilliant programmer who signs away rights to their code. Every researcher whose university owns their patents. The system Edison built requires Tesla-like brilliance, but punishes Tesla-like idealism. And maybe that's the real lesson. Not that Edison was evil or Tesla was perfect, but that the system itself is broken. We reward the wrong things. We celebrate entrepreneurs more than engineers. We remember the people who controlled companies more than the people who had the ideas. General Electric still exists. It's worth billions. Who founded it? Most people would say Edison. Actually, it was formed by merging multiple companies, and Edison was pushed out almost immediately. Westinghouse Electric still exists, now owned by Toshiba. How many people remember George Westinghouse? Tesla has a car company named after him now because Elon Musk understood that Tesla represents genius, vision, and tragedy. That's powerful branding. But how many people know Tesla invented the motor that powers that car? How many know the grid that charges? It uses Tesla's system. We remember stories, not systems. We remember personalities, not patents. We remember wars, not inventions. Maybe that's human nature. Maybe it's inevitable. But it means the people who change the world are often not the people we remember. And the people we remember often aren't the ones who changed it. So what do we do with this story? What does it mean for us today? First, recognize that the war never really ended. We're still fighting over the same things. Who controls infrastructure, who owns ideas, how much we trust technology, and whether innovation should be collaborative or competitive. Look at the current tech landscape. Apple versus Android. That's an ecosystem war, just like DC versus AC. Both technologies work. Both have advantages. The war is about control. Tesla's cars versus traditional automakers. That's not just about technology. It's about infrastructure, charging networks, political influence. Elon Musk, for all his problems, learned from both Tesla and Edison. Musk has Tesla's vision and media appeal, but also Edison's ruthlessness and marketing genius. When Musk says traditional car companies are doomed, that's Edison-level confidence. When he launches cars that might not be ready, that's Edison-level risk-taking. When he fights with regulators and competitors, that's Edison-level aggression. But Musk also has Tesla's pattern of brilliant ideas and questionable business decisions. The Hyperloop, the Boring Company, Neuralink. Some might work, some might be Wardenclyffe Tower all over again. The AI war is happening right now. OpenAI versus Google versus Anthropic versus everyone else. Look at how they market. OpenAI warns about AI risk, then releases powerful models. Google claims safety, but pushes features. Everyone's doing FUD while claiming they're not. It's Edison electrocuting dogs and claiming it's about safety, all over again. Crypto versus traditional finance. The arguments are identical to AC versus DC. Crypto advocates say centralized systems are dangerous and inefficient. Banks say crypto is dangerous and volatile. Both are spreading fear about the other. Who's right? Probably both, partially. Just like AC and DC both had legitimate advantages and problems. The lesson isn't that one side wins. The lesson is that wars over infrastructure always get dirty because the stakes are enormous. Second, recognize that the people building the future often don't benefit from it. How many developers built the internet for salaries while companies became worth billions? How many researchers published papers that became foundation models, making nothing while companies profit? How many of you reading this have brilliant ideas, technical skills, innovations that could change industries, but you'll never see the rewards because you don't own the IP, don't have the capital, don't have the connections? You're Tesla. The system is designed to reward the Edisons and the Westinghouses, the people who control resources, not the people who have ideas. Is that fair? No. Is it changing? Slowly, maybe. Open source, decentralized systems, new funding models. But the fundamental pattern remains. Third, be skeptical of technological propaganda. When a company tells you their competitor's product is dangerous, ask, what evidence? When a tech leader warns about existential risk from others' AI while building their own, ask, who benefits? When someone electrocutes an elephant, ask, why are they showing us this? Because the techniques Edison used, they work. Fear is more powerful than facts. Spectacle is more memorable than statistics. Stories beat studies. Every FUD campaign, from climate denial to vaccine hesitancy to AI doom scenarios, uses Edison's playbook. Make people scared. Give them simple villains. Repeat the message until it feels true. Being aware of this doesn't make you immune, but it helps. Fourth, remember that technological progress isn't inevitable or automatic. Better technology often loses to established infrastructure. Electric cars are better than gas cars for almost every use case, but it took 100 years for them to take off. Why? Infrastructure. Gas stations everywhere. No charging network. Just like DC had first mover advantage. Renewable energy is cheaper than fossil fuels now, but the transition is slow. Why? Existing infrastructure. Political resistance. Propaganda campaigns by oil companies. Just like Edison fighting AC. The better solution doesn't win by being better. It wins by being easier to adopt, better marketed, and sometimes by the competition dying off, which is depressing but important to understand. If you're working on something innovative, being right isn't enough. You need strategy, capital, timing, and luck. Fifth, question the hero worship. We want our inventors to be heroes or villains. Edison the villain who stole credit. Tesla, the hero who was betrayed. But both were complicated people. Edison employed thousands, created industries, improved lives, and also ran propaganda campaigns and tortured animals. Tesla had brilliant visions, gave up fortune for friendship, and also made terrible decisions and descended into paranoia. They were humans, flawed, brilliant, driven, cruel, generous, short-sighted, visionary, all at once. When we reduce them to heroes and villains, we miss the lessons. The lesson isn't be like Tesla or don't be like Edison. The lesson is, brilliance doesn't excuse cruelty. Success doesn't excuse propaganda. And progress requires more than one person's genius. Finally, think about the cost of competition. The war between Edison and Tesla delayed electrification, tortured animals, bankrupted companies, and destroyed lives. What if they'd collaborated? What if Edison had paid Tesla the $50,000? What if they'd combined Edison's business skills with Tesla's engineering genius? We'd have had better electrical systems faster, cheaper, safer. But collaboration is boring. Competition creates drama, drives investment, generates headlines. Our system rewards competition more than collaboration. That creates innovation through conflict, but at enormous cost. Is there another way? Could we design systems that reward collaboration as much as competition? Could we create incentives for sharing ideas instead of hoarding them? Some people are trying. Open source software, Creative Commons, patent pools. But these are still exceptions, fighting against a system designed to reward control. The Edison-Tesla war taught us that control equals profit. Maybe we need to unlearn that lesson. So here's my final question for you. What do you think? Do you use AC power right now? Statistically, yes, you absolutely do. Everything in your life runs on the system Tesla designed and Westinghouse funded, while Edison tried to destroy them. Does that make you think differently about the device you're using to read this? About the infrastructure we take for granted? About the people who built it and whether they got credit? Let me know in the comments what inventor or technological war you want to hear about next. Should I cover the railroad wars? The oil monopolies? The smartphone patent battles? The story of how Microsoft crushed Netscape? There are dozens of these wars, all following similar patterns. Hit that like button if you made it through this entire story. Subscribe for more deep dives into the battles that shaped our modern world. And remember, every time you turn on a light, you're witnessing the conclusion of a war that cost fortunes, reputations, and lives. Tesla's vision won, but Tesla lost. Edison's technology failed, but Edison's legacy survives. And Topsy the elephant? She's remembered not for her life, but for her death, used as propaganda in a war she had nothing to do with. That's history. That's progress. That's the price we paid for the electrical age. Was it worth it? I honestly don't know.